Let me begin by asking you something simple but profound. What happens when the world's so-called invincible powers begin to fear the very tactics they once used against others? Tonight, that question finds its answer in the skies over Tel Aviv. The panic rippling through Israel after Yemen's drone strikes is not merely about technology or warfare. It's about psychology, politics, and the unraveling myth of total control. When drones from a small war-torn nation send one of the most militarized states in the world into a frenzy, you know something fundamental has shifted in global power dynamics. The once unshakable calm of Tel Aviv has been pierced by the unmistakable hum of drones, an echo that carries both shock and symbolism. For a nation long accustomed to seeing itself as an impregnable fortress, Yemen's successful strikes have ignited a wave of unprecedented fear. The panic spreading through Israel's capital is not confined to military circles. It has seeped into the public psyche, fueling a sense of vulnerability that challenges Israel's decades-long image of security supremacy. The Iron Dome, once celebrated as an unbreachable shield, suddenly looks less like a symbol of protection and more like a system under siege. The reality that Yemen, a war-torn nation struggling for survival, could penetrate Israel's defense perimeter has rattled the very core of Israeli confidence. Tel Aviv, a city often described as the heartbeat of modern Israel, vibrant, bustling, and seemingly detached from regional conflict, now finds itself gripped by tension. The distant sound of air, raid sirens, once an occasional reminder of regional hostility, has become a haunting rhythm in daily life. Cafes empty at the first alert, families rush to shelters, and social media fills with live footage of explosions in the night sky. This is more than fear, it's disbelief. The narrative of total control that Israel has carefully cultivated for years is unraveling, replaced by an uneasy awareness that even the mightiest systems can falter. What makes this moment particularly striking is not just the military breach, but the psychological one. Panic, once reserved for Israel's adversaries, now resides in its own backyard. The government's reassurances sound increasingly hollow against the backdrop of visible public anxiety. Analysts on Israeli television speak with trembling voices, trying to explain how a distant, impoverished nation managed to outsmart a multi-billion-dollar defense apparatus. Every new drone alert now feels like a question directed at the heart of Israel's identity. If the homeland is not safe, what remains of its security doctrine? The situation is compounded by the powerful optics of this reversal. Images of Israeli citizens seeking cover from Yemeni drones are spreading globally, eroding the aura of invincibility that has long underpinned Israel's geopolitical posture. Each alarm, each interception reinforces the sense that a new era has dawned, one in which fear flows both ways. Yemen's drones have done more than strike physical targets. They have struck the psychological foundation of Israeli power. The skies over Tel Aviv no longer represent safety. They symbolize a shifting balance of fear that no missile defense can fully erase. A quiet revolution is unfolding in the Middle East, one that doesn't depend on tanks or treaties, but on the steady buzz of drones crossing borders once thought impenetrable. Yemen's bold strikes against Israel have done more than damage infrastructure. They've upended decades of regional power assumptions. For years, Israel stood as the unchallenged military hegemon of the region, armed with advanced Western weaponry, unmatched intelligence capabilities, and the psychological leverage of deterrence. But today, the battlefield narrative is shifting. The spectacle of a small, war-ravaged nation sending ripples of fear through one of the world's most sophisticated defense systems is nothing short of historic. It's a moment that signals a symbolic and perhaps irreversible shift in the balance of regional power. At the heart of this transformation lies the democratization of warfare. Technology that was once exclusive to superpowers is now accessible to resistance movements and smaller states. The drones launched from Yemen are not mere machines, they are statements. They tell the world that power is no longer measured solely by the size of one's army or the depth of one's budget, but by adaptability, innovation, and the courage to challenge established hierarchies. Israel, once confident that its strategic superiority would forever shield it from surprise, now finds itself confronting a new kind of adversary, one that doesn't play by the old rules. This recalibration of power has psychological and geopolitical implications far beyond the immediate conflict. Across the region, observers are taking note. In capitals from Tehran to Beirut, and even in Washington and Brussels, policymakers are recognizing that the age of unilateral dominance is waning. The success of Yemen's low-cost, high-impact strategy has exposed the vulnerability of traditional power structures. Every intercepted drone, every near miss, every televised scramble by Israeli defense forces tells a deeper story. The monopoly on military dominance is breaking down. And perhaps the most compelling part of this story is the symbolism it carries. For decades, Israel's strength has been a cornerstone of Western strategic assurance in the Middle East. Yet now, the sight of a once marginalized nation like Yemen dictating the tempo of fear and response has shattered that psychological advantage. The drones have not just crossed borders, they have crossed thresholds of perception, reshaping how the region and the world define strength. What was once unthinkable is now undeniable. The era of absolute superiority has given way to an age where even the smallest players can rewrite the rules of power with a single flight. War is not only fought on the battlefield, it's waged in the balance sheets, in the quiet corridors where economic power decides endurance. Israel's confrontation with Yemen's drones has illuminated a striking irony. The mightiest military in the region is being drained not by defeat in combat, but by the crushing economics of asymmetrical warfare. Each time an inexpensive Yemeni drone takes flight, Israel is forced to respond with interception systems that cost exponentially more. A single Iron Dome missile can exceed 50,000, while a drone cobbled together from affordable components and improvised technology may cost less than 1,000. This imbalance is not just tactical, it's strategic, bleeding resources and testing sustainability in a way that traditional warfare never could. The brilliance of Yemen's approach lies in its economic simplicity. By leveraging accessible technology, it has turned the logic of modern war upside down. The power once defined by wealth and advanced machinery is now being challenged by cost-effective ingenuity. Every intercepted drone forces Israel to spend heavily just to maintain the illusion of safety, creating a spiraling economic trap. The spectacle of a technologically superior state burning through millions to fend off a handful of low-cost aerial devices is a public relations and fiscal nightmare. What once symbolized control has become a symbol of vulnerability. Behind the scenes, Israeli defense analysts and policymakers are grappling with a painful reality. Their security model, built on constant technological escalation, has a breaking point. Maintaining 24-hour alert systems, launching counter-interception missiles, and repairing the aftermath of strikes all contribute to an invisible drain on the economy. Investors are watching nervously as defense spending surges, civilian budgets shrink, and uncertainty grows in financial markets. For a nation whose stability depends as much on economic confidence as on military deterrence, this erosion is deeply unsettling. But perhaps most damaging is the psychological economics of it all. Every drone Yemen launches is not just a physical threat, It's a financial provocation, a reminder that Israel's costly defense structure can be exhausted by persistence. It's warfare designed to make power feel expensive and insecurity feel cheap. And as these encounters continue, the deeper truth becomes impossible to ignore in a world where innovation trumps investment and resourcefulness defeats riches. Israel's economic armor is beginning to crack. The drones may be small, but their shadow looms large over the future of modern warfare and over the fiscal foundations of a nation that once thought itself untouchable. Behind the polished podiums and carefully worded press conferences in Tel Aviv, a storm of anxiety brews within Israel's corridors of power. The recent wave of Yemeni drone strikes has not only disrupted airspace, but unsettled the inner circles of Israeli leadership. Officials who once projected unwavering confidence now meet behind closed doors in hurried, tense gatherings, their voices low, their faces drawn. Intelligence agencies are under immense scrutiny, their credibility questioned after repeated failures to predict or prevent the assaults. What was once considered a distant, improbable threat has become an immediate, unrelenting reality, and it's tearing at the fabric of Israel's political command. Inside the Knesset, the atmosphere has grown combustible. Opposition figures accuse the government of losing control, while ruling coalition members scramble to restore an image of stability. Each new strike intensifies the sense of panic, feeding public doubt and political infighting. The leadership's greatest enemy is no longer the drones themselves. It is the spreading perception that they cannot manage the crisis. In politics, perception is power. And in Israel today, that perception is unraveling fast. Ministers demand harsher responses. Military officials caution restraint. The rift between action and caution is widening, revealing fractures that go far deeper than policy differences. It's a clash of survival instincts among those who govern under siege. Media broadcasts amplify the tension. Every siren wail, every flash of intercepting missiles becomes live political theater. Israeli anchors speak in urgent tones, replaying dramatic visuals that both inform and inflame public emotion. The nation's sense of security, once its proudest possession, is slipping away in real time, and the leadership can feel that loss like a tightening noose. Paranoia begins to take hold, a kind that spreads not from the enemy outside, but from fear within. Intelligence officers question leaks, commanders mistrust briefings, and the political class searches desperately for someone to blame. As the walls close in, Israel's leadership is finding that power built on control quickly falters when control is lost. This paranoia is not a symptom of weakness alone. It is the inevitable shadow of dominance. The same apparatus that once projected strength across the region is now devouring itself in suspicion and reaction. The fear once used as a weapon has turned inward, and the result is a leadership struggling not just to defend its borders, but to defend its own sense of authority. The drones may be Yemen's creation, but the panic they have unleashed is entirely homegrown. The ripples of Yemen's drone offensive extend far beyond the Middle East, shaking the foundations of global military thinking. What the world is witnessing is not a regional skirmish, it is the dawn of a new strategic paradigm. The success of low-cost, precision-based drone warfare against one of the most advanced military systems on Earth has forced global powers to rethink everything they thought they knew about defense. From Washington to Moscow, from Beijing to Brussels, military analysts are revising doctrines, reassessing vulnerabilities, and recognizing a startling truth. The monopoly of power, once held by nations with massive defense budgets, is slipping away. The age of asymmetry has arrived, and Yemen's bold defiance has become its symbol. For decades, modern warfare was built on expensive deterrence, the idea that technological superiority would guarantee security. But Yemen's drones have exposed the flaw in that logic. They have shown that adaptability, innovation, and courage can outweigh financial and industrial might. Every drone that takes flight from Yemen's skies is a message to the world. Power no longer belongs solely to those who can afford it. Smaller states and resistance movements are watching closely, learning that the blueprint for challenging superpowers no longer lies in numbers, but in strategy and creativity. The implications are staggering. Defense ministries across continents are now quietly acknowledging that their multi-billion-dollar systems may not be as untouchable as once believed. This awakening is reshaping the psychology of global conflict. Nations that once dictated terms of war are now confronting the uncomfortable reality that their control can be disrupted by the inexpensive and the unexpected. The asymmetry of cost and impact has become the great equalizer, undermining the hierarchy of military dominance that defined the 20th century. In war rooms around the world, generals and policymakers are grappling with the same haunting question: if Israel can be unsettled by Yemen's drones, what does that mean for us? The reverberations of this realization are already visible. Smaller powers, militias, and state actors are investing not in traditional armies, but in drone fleets, cyber capabilities, and autonomous systems, tools that can pierce even the strongest armor. Yemen's actions have not only altered the Middle Eastern battlefield, they have rewritten the global playbook. The drones that soared over Tel Aviv carried more than explosives. They carried a message powerful enough to redefine the future of warfare. And now the world is listening. For years, Israel's strength was not just military, it was psychological. It projected the image of a nation that could never be touched, a fortress guarded by cutting-edge technology and unwavering resolve. The Iron Dome became a symbol of invincibility, a technological crown jewel that reassured its citizens and intimidated its rivals. But that symbol now flickers under the shadow of Yemen's drones. What was once viewed as an impenetrable sky has been pierced, and with each strike, the myth of absolute security is crumbling. Fear has seeped into the very spaces that once pulsed with confidence. The hum of drones above Tel Aviv is more than a tactical threat. It's the sound of a narrative collapsing. The psychological rupture is profound. Israel's enemies are not celebrating just the physical impact of the attacks. They are celebrating the exposure of weakness. In a nation that has long relied on deterrence, the belief that no one would dare strike, it is that belief itself that has now been struck down. When citizens in Tel Aviv rush to shelters, when the air sirens wail over what was once considered untouchable ground, it alters something deep in the national consciousness. The fear once reserved for border towns has now reached the heart of Israel's urban pride. The illusion of dominance has been replaced by a tangible awareness of vulnerability. This unraveling is more than emotional, it's strategic. Israel's security doctrine was built on deterrence and perception. The idea that overwhelming response capacity would prevent enemies from acting is now under siege. Each drone that manages to evade detection chips away at the very foundation of that doctrine. The fear gripping the public translates into political pressure, forcing leaders to act more aggressively, often impulsively. Yet every aggressive act invites further escalation, creating a cycle where Israel's attempts to restore control only deepen its appearance of instability. The fortress mentality that once gave it strength is now turning inward, feeding paranoia and doubt. What makes this moment even more striking is the global spectacle it creates. The world is watching as Israel, once the model of resilience, confronts its own fragility. Images of explosions over Tel Aviv are being replayed not just on screens, but in minds, eroding the myth of untouchable supremacy that defined Israeli power for generations. The cracks are no longer theoretical. They are visible, audible, undeniable. The era of unquestioned invincibility has ended, and what remains is a nation forced to reconcile with a truth it has long refused to face. No fortress, no matter how fortified, can silence the sound of fear once it takes flight. So, as the skies over Tel Aviv echo with alarms tonight, remember this: power built on fear will always fall to courage born of desperation. The age of unchecked dominance is cracking open, and through those cracks, the truth is flying on the wings of drones, yes, but also on the winds of history. Thank you.